Abraham Lincoln said, "You can fool all the people some of the time, some of the people all of the time, but you cannot fool all the people all the time." Hello everyone, I am MD and this is the fourth branch program. First, a warning. This program is not suitable for all audiences. I repeat, the content of this program is not for everyone. Now, to find out whether it's for you, here are two questions you should answer first. To continue watching or to even continue watching the video. Would you entrust your teenage daughter to a known rapist? Question number two. Would you have a known pedophile cared for your toddler? Be it your aunt, your parents, family members, friends? Would you? If you have difficulty answering either question, this program is not for you. If you answer yes to either or both questions, this program is definitely not for you. However, if you answer absolutely not to both questions, you should stick around. This program is designed for you. And it will be educational, informative, instructional, and quite interesting. But to help you decide, here is 1 minute to make that faithful decision about whether this program is yours or not. Well, time is up. If you are still here, it is safe to conclude you are an individual of some level of decency. You have at very least some level of morality. In other words, this program is catered to you. Stick with me for a moment and we will be debating very shortly a very important topic. The nomination of Brett Kavanaugh as the next Supreme Court Justice, or rather, as I refer to in my invite, the nomination of Kavanaugh has been delayed indefinitely. Stay for just a moment and we will come back to discuss what is the fate of Brett Kavanaugh. The nomination of Brett Kavanaugh by the President of the United States did not happen in the void. The Trump administration did not happen to have some sort of revelation, or nor did it so happen that Kavanaugh was the only candidate who is qualified to be on the Supreme Court Justice. If we believe the reports, Brett Kavanaugh was added to the list of those who would be considered for the post of justice at the very last moment. and he was the only last individual added to that list. The question is, why? All other individuals were previously vetted by various groups within the Republican Party, groups who have an interest in having a particular individual in the Supreme Court. Now, whether it's any of those individuals or Brett Kavanaugh, they all fall within a very specific category. They are Republicans, they share Republican views, and of course, placed on the Supreme Court, they will most likely, on most of the time, will vote Republican. But the question remains, why does Trump focus specifically, almost exclusively, on Brett Kavanaugh? Usually when someone who sits in the Oval Office, the President of the United States, picks an individual for whatever post, once it becomes clear that there are issues with that individual, more often than not, that individual would either withdraw his candidacy for the post, or the President of the United States would have some sort of conversation with the candidate, and that matter would be put to rest pretty quickly. However, with Kavanaugh, it seems very, very different. The question is why? Now, we know one thing for sure, that the President of the United States, Donald J. Trump, always thinks ahead of how to get out of any situation or any predicament. The past few months, there has been a lot of conversation about where Robert Mueller, the special counsel, is in the investigation, in the Russia collusion investigation. And if we believe any of the reports, it seems that the special counsel has gotten very, very, very close to the doors of the President of the United States. Now, you may recall that there has been a number of individuals who were associated with the Donald Trump campaign and even administration, and all of whom were either already pleaded guilty, targets or suspect. And what makes the matter even more disturbing for the presidency of Donald Trump is the fact that there are three important individuals who had pleaded guilty and who are currently cooperating with the special counsel. And those individuals, they do have very important, very relevant information that will make it almost impossible for Donald Trump to escape. It is Michael Cohen, who was his personal attorney, who pretty much keeps every detail of every conversation that he has had with Donald Trump. We have Mike Flynn, who was the national security advisor to Donald Trump and who also participated in the campaign, and according to some report, seems to have been involved in negotiating with the Russian counterpart. And you have, of course, Paul Manafort, who was the campaign manager for the Donald Trump campaign team for a period of 4 months. All three of them pleaded guilty, and all three of them are currently cooperating with the special counsel. So it seems that Donald Trump already read the writing on the wall, and very certain that after the midterm, the special counsel will come knocking at his door. For that reason, it seems that Brett Kavanaugh is the only candidate to place on the Supreme Court to save him, because at this point, the conversation has been around the president being subpoenaed by the special counsel. And Brett Kavanaugh happened to be the only justice, the only judge who seems to not like the idea. According to opinion he had written, interview he had given, he doesn't think that a special counsel should subpoena a president. He doesn't even think a special counsel should be around investigating a president. And Mr. Kavanaugh had gone as far as saying that the president of the United States can indeed get rid of the special counsel. Which of course brings us back to the reason that Donald Trump wants Brett Kavanaugh at all costs. But what's troubling is not so much that Donald Trump wants to put someone on the Supreme Court to defend him from a possible subpoena by the special counsel. What's troubling is the fact that members in the Judiciary Committee, whose task is to vote on the confirmation of Brett Kavanaugh, have been using every single maneuver to make certain that Brett Kavanaugh is placed on the Supreme Court. And Democrats, of course, have been playing every trick in the book to prevent that from happening. And the latest was the Christine Blasey Ford accusation that Brett Kavanaugh may have assaulted her a few decades ago. Now, Republicans use that as a quote-unquote ploy by the Democrat to prevent Brett Kavanaugh from being confirmed. The Republicans are saying it. The Republicans are outraged. Members of the Republican parties, the members of different groups in the Republican Party, even constituents, seems to be outraged that Democrats are trying to prevent Brett Kavanaugh from being confirmed to the Supreme Court. There is no surprise here. In Washington, that's the game that's played. Democrats try to stop Republicans from doing something. Republicans try to stop Democrats. There is no surprise here. This is what we call gridlock. It has been going on for decades now. And there is no reason for anyone to be outraged. Of course, you want your judge to be on the Supreme Court. And Democrats don't. And in addition, Democrat had also suffered in the hands of the Republican not too long ago. During the Obama administration, Mitch McConnell withheld the possibility for Merrick Garland, who happens to be a Republican moderate, not even a Democrat. Mitch McConnell prevented Merrick Garland from even having a hearing on the floor, let alone be voted on for confirmation. So yes, both Democrats and Republicans have been playing that game. So the question is not whether Democrats want Brett Kavanaugh and Republican wants Brett Kavanaugh, but Democrats don't. That's a game that's played. That's what politics is. But what is disturbing is not even the accusation of sexual assault by Christine Blasey Ford, but rather the reaction by Brett Kavanaugh. Everyone knows that a judge, someone who is promoted to become a justice in the Supreme Court, has a very important role to play. And that individual voice is very powerful. That individual will help to shape the nation for generations to come. So we expect every member, every individual placed on the Supreme Court is at the very least an individual with a high level of integrity. But most importantly, we expect an individual with impartiality. That's what a judge is supposed to be, whether you're at the Supreme Court or any level within the court system. A judge is to be impartial. And we also expect a judge, an individual who aspires to be placed on the Supreme Court, to at least have a certain level of wisdom. Last Thursday, at the hearing, it was obvious to everyone, whether you support Brett Kavanaugh or not, that he did not display any such characteristic. He did not display impartiality. We heard Brett Kavanaugh going after the Democrats. That's not what a judge does. That's not what a judge is. No matter how tough it is, no matter how bad it is, no matter how outraged a judge is, this is impossible to be a judge if that level of partiality, partisanship is grounded in that individual. And that's what Brett Kavanaugh displayed. And we heard his outrage, and we didn't hear any wisdom coming out of his opening statement or even the answering of the question. Brett Kavanaugh was given many opportunities to prove to the nation that he is, one, an impartial judge, two, he is a wise individual, and he has the good temper required to be placed on the Supreme Court. But instead, we watch an individual, an unhinged individual, unable to control his temper, unwise, but above all, display a high level of partisanship. Now, you may want Judge Kavanaugh, you may want Brett Kavanaugh because, well, you are a Republican. Or you may not want Brett Kavanaugh because you are a Democrat. But the decision should not, at this point, be based on whether you are a Republican or you are a Democrat, because the stakes are too high. Brett Kavanaugh is aspired to be on the Supreme Court. He had proven beyond a reasonable doubt that he is not qualified to be such an individual. No, it's not about his credential. He had plenty. He went to Yale, he studied law, and he had practice for quite some time. He had held so many different positions, which would make him, from a credential perspective, qualified to become a Supreme Court justice. But we are not talking about that. We are referring to an individual who was provided the opportunity. What is the best opportunity that you were accused of sexually assaulting an individual for you to display your wisdom to the world, to the nation, and to prove that you have what it takes to be an impartial judge? No, Brett Kavanaugh did not display that. Brett Kavanaugh displayed an individual who was really highly drunk or highly on drugs, outraged to the point of blaming everybody else for his problem. Now, you can spin it 1,000 ways. You can say Democrats have withheld the information and to drop a bombshell at the last minute. And you could be right. You may even go as far as saying that Democrats had violated the principle of keeping the information provided to Dianne Feinstein hidden, secret, as she had requested. You may even blame Democrats for that. It might as well be. You may even say there is nothing that proves that Brett Kavanaugh is guilty of what he's being accused of, which might be true, which actually you can use as well. And there are a number of different statements that you can make that could be true, or even if not proven, could be accepted at face value. And Brett Kavanaugh ought to defend himself. And there is nothing wrong with that. But there are two things to keep in mind. Number one, this is not a judgment. This is not to condemn Brett Kavanaugh. That's number one. And number two, Brett Kavanaugh was sitting in his house, in his living room, where he had the opportunity to process the information and react as a judge. Show wisdom. Show good temperament. Instead, Brett Kavanaugh comes out swinging, bashing the Democrat, and even went as far as using the Clinton impeachment as part of some sort of conspiracy. This is not the characteristic of a judge you want on the Supreme Court. Now, you may want instant gratification for yourself because you want Brett Kavanaugh on the Supreme Court, and you are fighting tooth and nail to make sure that happens. That's instant gratification. At what cost? Your kids, your grandkids, your great-grandkids, the future generation, the country will have to pay the price of whatever decision justices make today. They shape our nation. And Brett Kavanaugh does not have the temperament and that does not have the wisdom. We know that because we know that even before people from his past, people from his classmates in college, before they even came out, we know that Brett Kavanaugh was not being truthful. And this is not an individual you want to place on the Supreme Court, the highest court in the land. I grew up in a family where if I tell a white lie, even if I weren't caught by my parents, I feel bad about doing it. Because it doesn't feel right. And here you are, a judge, someone who aspired to sit on the Supreme Court. Raise his hand in front of the nation and lie every single opportunity he had. Now, I will be reading shortly a full statement made by his close friend, Chad Ludingen, a Yale classmate, which comments on not only Brett Kavanaugh's interview at Fox, but the hearing last Thursday. It should be of concern to every American citizen that the person who wants to become the next justice has to be a trustworthy individual. No, it's not about Christine Blasey Ford accusation. It may not be true. It may be mistaken identity, as Judge Brett Kavanaugh claimed. It may be a ploy by the Democrat to stop the nomination of Brett Kavanaugh. It may even be a way for them to make certain that that doesn't happen until after the midterm. All that I would accept. That's politics, and that's playing politics. But what is not acceptable is to have an individual who wants to be the next justice but cannot be trusted. If you go in front of a judge today, you go in front of a judge and they find out that you lie, you will go to jail. Now, if a judge requires that from us, citizens of the country, how much more it is necessary for a judge to be truthful. As a human being, we're not expecting Brett Kavanaugh to be perfect. But we expect him to have a certain level of integrity. We expect him to have higher integrity than the rest of us. Now, it's not because Brett Kavanaugh drank alcohol when he was in high school or when he was in college. No, it's not about that. And as his friend Chad Ludington said, we cannot hold someone hostage for something that the individual had done when he was 18, when he was 21 years old. No, this is not what is at stake today. Brett Kavanaugh could have put an end to the whole matter. Say, yes, I drank in college. I used to drink. I used to drink a lot. I used to be a heavy drinker. And guess what? Since I left college, I don't drink anymore. I'm sober. I've been sober. I never drink. I don't even drink wine anymore. He could have said something to that effect. But instead, after swearing to tell the truth, the whole truth and nothing but the truth in front of the nation, Brett Kavanaugh lied over and over and over. No, it doesn't have the integrity to be a justice. And it's not about Christine Blasey Ford. The only thing that Christine has provided us is the opportunity to see Brett Kavanaugh raw. He had the opportunity to prove himself as someone who would be a great judge. He had the opportunity several times. When the accusation first came out, when he went on Fox, he could have spilled his gut. He was in high school. I was a young man. I drank a lot. But I recovered from all that. He could have done all that. And at the hearing on Thursday, he could have said the same thing again and say that, hey, listen, in high school, in college, I was a wild individual. I drank, and sometimes I drank until I passed out. So, a lot of other people have done those kind of things. They drink in college. They do things sometimes you may not even want to bring forth for anybody to know that it had happened. And people would have looked at it, part of your past. So what? But instead, he lied over and over and over. And that is what is at stake at this point. That you have an individual and he's no longer 18, he's no longer 21, he is currently serving as a judge in the Court of Appeal in the District of Columbia, the court that is one step lower than being a justice. And even as of date, he cannot tell the truth. This is not an individual with character, and he doesn't belong on the Supreme Court. When I return, I will play for you the whole statement by Chad Ludington, Brett Kavanaugh classmate at Yale. I'll be right back. Ignorance, they say, is the biggest threat to any democracy. Indeed, it is. Plato, a Greek philosopher born in 427 BC, said that ignorance is the root and stem of all evil. Today, members in the Republican Party wear ignorance as a badge of honor, while the rest of the country watch powerless the destruction of a country which was once the envy of the world. The media is the enemy of the country, said Donald Trump. The Democrat legislators are obstructionists for not going along with everything the president wants. The Department of Justice is biased for investigating corruption in the Trump administration. This is the United States of America. Any question?
Wayfair, let me show you how I do my thing. Check it. Wayfair my this, Wayfair my that. Wayfair my this, Wayfair my that. Wayfair my this, Wayfair my that. Wayfair it all. Here we go now. Wayfair my this, Wayfair my that. Wayfair my this, Wayfair my that.
Don't just shop for your home. Wayfair your home. Find everything you need and more at wayfair.com today.
Join me here on the 4th branch at 10:30 a.m. and 6:30 p.m. every Saturday. Donald Trump is wrong to call the media the enemy of the country. Adolf Hitler did exactly the same thing in 1933. Journalists are not in the business of fairness. Our business, our only business, is to be objective. It is our duty to hold Trump and every administration accountable. Today, it is urgent, it is necessary, it is critical. Our very freedom depends on it.
Mom, Dad, hi. I had a very minor fender bender tonight in an unreasonably narrow fast food drive-thru lane. But what a powerful life lesson. And don't worry, I have everything handled. I already spoke to our Allstate agent, and I know that we have accident forgiveness, which is so smart on your guys' part. Like the fact that they'll just forgive you.
4 weeks without the car.
Okay, yep, good night.
With accident forgiveness, your rates won't go up just because of an accident. Switching to Allstate is worth it.
We are going to provide you a full statement by Chad Ludington, who is or was Brett Kavanaugh classmate in regards to what's currently going on in terms of the discussion between whether Brett Kavanaugh tells the truth or not. Here is the statement. I have been contacted by numerous reporters about Brett Kavanaugh and have not wanted to say anything because I have nothing to contribute about what kind of justice it would be. I knew Brett at Yale because I was a classmate and a varsity basketball player, and Brett enjoyed socializing with athletes. Indeed, athletes formed the core of Brett's social circle. In recent days, I have become deeply troubled by what has been a blatant mischaracterization by Brett himself of his drinking at Yale. When I watched Brett and his wife being interviewed on Fox News on Monday, and when I watched Brett deliver his testimony under oath to the Senate Judiciary Committee on Thursday, I cringe. For the fact is, at Yale, and I can speak to no other times, Brett was a frequent drinker and a heavy drinker. I know, because especially in our first 2 years in college, I often drank with him. On many occasions, I heard Brett slur his words and saw him staggering from alcohol consumption, not all of which was beer. When Brett got drunk, he was often belligerent and aggressive. On one of the last occasions I purposely socialized with Brett, I witnessed him respond to a semi-hostile remark, not by diffusing the situation, but by throwing his beer in the man's face and starting a fight that ended with one of our mutual friends in jail. I do not believe that the heavy drinking or even loudish behavior of an 18 or even 21 years old should condemn a person for the rest of his life. I would be an hypocrite to think so. However, I have direct and repeated knowledge about his drinking and his disposition while drunk. And I do believe that Brett's action as a 53-year-old federal judge mattered. If he lied about his past action on national television, and more specifically, while speaking under oath and in front of the United States Senate, I believe those lies should have consequences. It is truth that is at stake. And I believe that the ability to speak the truth, even when it does not reflect well upon oneself, is a paramount quality we seek in our nation's most powerful judges. I can say unequivocally that in denying the possibility that he ever blacked out from drinking, and in downplaying the degree and frequency of his drinking, Brett has not told the truth. I felt it was my civic duty to tell of my experience while drinking with Brett, and I offer this statement to the press. I have no desire to speak further publicly and nothing more to say to the press at this time. I will, however, take my information to the FBI. I'll be right back. As I mentioned at the beginning of this program, it's not the accusation of Christine Blasey Ford that is in question. This is not to minimize the importance of the accusation. And it is not the tricks played by the Democrats that are in question. Although it's fair to say that it's dirty politics. What is at stake is an individual that has no integrity, whose temper cannot be part of the justices. And most importantly, his partisanship is not a characteristic to have as a judge. For all these reasons, it is my view that whether you're a Democrat or a Republican, that you should encourage, you should urge your congressman, your senator, you should urge your representative to vote no on Brett Kavanaugh. Because what at stake is not a Democrat aspect or a Republican aspect. What is at stake is the integrity of the Supreme Court. And at this point in the history of our country, we should not accept to put just anybody on the Supreme Court. And Brett Kavanaugh is not qualified to be on the Supreme Court. And I will repeat again, it's not because of his credential. He has plenty. He is a smart individual, a jurist, someone that his peers might even respect, but he doesn't have the temperament, he doesn't have the integrity, and his lack of wisdom are sufficient to keep him from the Supreme Court. This is part 2 of a series on Brett Kavanaugh confirmation has been cancelled. I hope to see you tomorrow for part 3. You have a good afternoon. I am MD, and this is the 4th branch program.